I'm going to mute myself.
Oh. No. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and mute everyone who's on Zoom, and we're going to begin. So I want to welcome everyone, all of the folks who are here in person, all of whom at this point are taking advantage of our new masks optional policy, including me. Uh, And we also have a number of folks on Zoom. So welcome to you. And anyone who's joining us on YouTube, welcome to you as well. Our cantorial soloist, Noni Schuster-Donato, is not with us this evening. She is fine. She just had another obligation tonight. But Michael Tornick is here and is, a miracle worker who can play all the songs in any key he wants. And therefore, he can play them so that I can sing them. And so that's what's going to happen. And all mistakes are mine. It's what, like, the authors say, right? All mistakes are mine. Okay. Let's just take a moment. I don't know about you. I had a pretty intense week. We had security training here this week, and that was pretty intense. So I've got some things to put aside for Shabbat, and perhaps you do as well. So I'd like to invite all of us to do whatever we need to do. Take a deep breath. Breathe out the tension. Do whatever we need to do to feel comfortable in whatever space we are in, if we are in this space or if you are in your space at home. And if you have a prayer book, we are beginning on page 127 in the bracketed numbers if there are two sets of numbers. There are days when we seek things for ourselves and measure failure by what we do not gain. On Shabbat, we seek not to acquire, but to share. There are days when we exploit nature as if it were a horn of plenty that can never be exhausted. On Shabbat, we stand in wonder before the mystery of creation. There are days when we act as if we cared nothing for the rights of others. On Shabbat, we remember that justice is our duty and a better world our goal. So we embrace Shabbat, day of rest, day of wonder, day of peace. We come to our candle blessing. Would somebody like the honor of doing the blessing over the candles? It could be on Zoom, could be in person. Anybody at home have candles ready to go? No? Anybody here want to do the blessing over the candles? Janice and Phyllis are fighting it out because neither of them really wants to do it, apparently. Here, do you want me to light the little candle? Okay. I always get nervous because it's close to the napkin. It's page 120 and 121. Ooh, I got it lit on the first try. Oh, I could have blown it out. I'm not wearing a mask. Okay. You're going to need the microphone so that people on Zoom can hear you. Yeah. What? Oh, you're right. Thank you. Okay.
As these candles give light to all who behold them, so may we by our lives give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we in our own day be among those who kindle light. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushono b'mitzvosav, v'sivano lahadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Amen. Thank you, Phyllis. I'm just going to put out the little candle. We turn now to the Kiddush. It's on page 123. And would someone like to read the English of the Kiddush? Either in...
Okay, I will.
Oh, Robert volunteered. Go ahead, Robert.
Okay, thank you. Praise to you, Adonai, God, sovereign of the universe, creator, fruit of the vine. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who finding favor with us, sanctified us with mitzvot. In love and favor, you made the holy Shabbat our heritage as a reminder of the work of creation. As first among our sacred days, it recalls the exodus from Egypt. You chose us and set us apart from the peoples. In love and favor, you have given us your holy Shabbat as inheritance. Praise to you, Adonai, who sanctifies Shabbat. Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat.
If you're able, please rise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu. V'shabbat kodsho ve'ahava uvratzon inchilanu, zikaron lema'aseh v'reshit, ki hu yom techila lemikraye kodesh, zecher letziat Mitzrayim, kivanu v'achata ve'otanu kiddashta mikol ha'amim v'shabbat kodshecha ve'ahava uvratzon hinchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat. You may be seated. Did I make a face? Oh. I have not had the Kiddush wine in quite some time. What? So it's different wine. Okay, we're turning now to page 138 in the prayer book for Lecha Dodi, the poem that invites us to turn to one another and say, "Come with me, beloved, to meet the Shabbat bride." And we imagine the Shabbat as a bride, joining us to bring joy and beauty to our Shabbat day. Lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. 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 Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad, Hishmi'anu el hamyuchad, Adonai echad u'shemo echad, l'shem u'tiferet v'litila. Lecha dodi likrat kala, פני שבת נקבלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה, לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה, כי היא מקור הברכה, מראש מקדם נסוכה, סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. התעוררי, התעוררי, כי באורך קומי אורי, 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 שיר דברי, כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה. לך דודי, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. בואי בשלום עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצהלה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה, בואי חלה, בואי חלה. לך דודי, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. We continue with the Baruch Hu, page 146. Yai la 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 la, yai la 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 la, yai la 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 la, yai la 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 la, yai la 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 la, yai la 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 la, yai la 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 la, yai la 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 la. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach, Baruch Adonai HaMevorach, HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. HaMevorach, HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Page 148, I invite you to read with me. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who speaks the evening into being, skillfully opens the gates, thoughtfully alters the time and changes the seasons, and arranges the stars in their heavenly courses according to plan. You are creator of day and night, rolling light away from darkness and darkness from light, transforming day into night and distinguishing one from the other. Adonai Tsevaot is your name. Ever-living God, may you reign continually over us into eternity. Blessed are you, Adonai, who brings on evening. Baruch atah Adonai ha'ma'ariv aravim. Page 150. Ahavat olam Beit Yisrael Amcha ahavta Amcha ahavta Torah u'mitzvot, chukim u'mishpatim, otanu limadta, otanu limadta. Al ken Adonai Eloheinu b'shochbenu, u'kumenu nasiach b'chukecha, v'nismach b'divrei Toratecha, uv'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed, ki hem chayenu, ve'orech yameinu, uvahem nege yomam v'layla, nege yomam v'layla. Ve'ahavatcha al tasir, mimenu le'olamim, Baruch atah Adonai, ohev amo Yisrael. We continue with the Shema, page 152. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. You may be seated. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha v'chol levavcha u'v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol meotecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'beitecha uv'lechtecha v'derech uv'shochbecha uv'kumecha u'kshartam le'ot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot beinenecha u'chtavtam al mezuzot beitecha u'visharecha leman tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'tem kiddoshim le'Elohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim lihiot lachem le'Elohim Ani Adonai Elohechem. Emet. On page 157, I invite you to read with me. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands, marching together. Page 158. Ya bye bye bim bim bum, ya bye bye bim bum, ya bye bye bim bim bum, ya bye bye bim bum. Ay 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 ay, bye bye bim bum. Ay 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 ay, bye bye bim bum. Mi kamocha bailim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar bakodesh, norati lo rosef sefele, norati loro sefele, malechutecha rauvanecha, bokei hayam lifnei Moshe, ze Elianu ve'amru, Adonai imloch leolam vayet, ya bye bye bim bim bam, ya bye bye bim bam, ya bye bye bim bim bam, ya bye bye bim bam, ay 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 ay, ya bye bye bim bam, ay 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 ay, ya bye bye bim bam. ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו. ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל. Page 161. Grant, O God, that we lie down in peace and raise us up our guardian to life renewed. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Guide us with your good counsel. For your name's sake be our help. Shield and shelter us beneath the shadow of your wings. Defend us against enemies, illness, war, famine, and sorrow. Distance us from wrongdoing. For you, God, watch over us and deliver us. For you, God, are gracious and merciful. Guard our going and coming to life and to peace evermore. Blessed are you, Adonai, guardian of Israel, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over all your people Israel, and over Jerusalem. Baruch atah Adonai, hapores sukat shalom Elenu ve'al kol amo Yisrael ve'al Yerushalayim. Page 162, V'shamru. V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי 6 ימים עשה אדוני, עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש, שבת ויהי נפש, שבת ויהי נפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. We have come to the tefillah beginning on page 164. If you're able, I invite you to rise. Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, הגדול, הגיבור והנורא, אל עליון, גומל חסדים טובים, וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לפני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע. משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם, מחכה חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש. You may be seated. Page 173. Let's all read together. May these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day. And may this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat. Page 175. You are with us in our prayer, our love, and our doubt, in our longing to feel your presence and do your will. You are the still, clear voice within us. Therefore, O God, when doubt troubles us, when anxiety makes us tremble, when pain clouds the mind, we look inward for the answer to our prayers. There may we find you, and there find courage, insight, and endurance. And let our worship bring us closer to one another, that all Israel and all who seek you may find new strength for your service. Baruch atah Adonai, she'otcha levadcha b'yir'ah na'avod. We've come to our prayer of thanksgiving, Modim, and so I'd like to invite anyone who wishes to share something that they're feeling grateful for this evening. You can put it in the chat if you're on Zoom. You can say it out loud if you're in the room or if you're on Zoom. So who is grateful for something this week? Phyllis. Phyllis and Ron had their 53rd anniversary. Mazal Tov. Michael Rose. Mike had his first inter-office business trip in 2 years. He went to Chicago this week and was in an office with people. Lori Pandolfo is grateful to feel safe. Patricia is grateful for the weekend, for health and for strength. Charlotte is grateful for friendship and love. Modim anachnu lach for all of that. Teddy? Teddy's older daughter decided that she would host a second Seder this year. Yay! Gail and Bob, or Gail says she is grateful for sweet friends with whom Bob and Gail shared gardening today. Irene Nashinoff had a fabulous time today at East Midwood Jewish Center and was able to see many friends. Modim anachnu lach. Karen is grateful for family, friends, and the temple. Modim anachnu lach, Karen. Who else? Mary Lou is grateful for great neighbors and friends, wonderful medical care, and beautiful spring weather. Okay. Yes, I'm grateful that today was a pretty nice day. All right, I think that's it, which is plenty. Baruch atah Adonai hatov shimcha ulecha na'el lehodot. We continue now on page 178 with Shalom Rav. Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. Ki atahu melech adon lechol hashalom. Ki atahu melech adon lechol hashalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. V'tov beinecha levarech et amcha Yisrael bechol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. Tasim leolam. Tasim leolam. Baruch atah Adonai hamivarech et amo Yisrael b'shalom. We've come now to our quiet prayer. There are words on pages 180 and 181 of the prayer book. If you can see the screen, there are words on the screen, but we can always use the words that are in our own hearts. We continue quietly. יהיו לרצון אמרי פי והגיון Adonai Tzuri, Adonai Tzuri, V'goali, V'goali. May the words of our mouths and the meditations in our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O God, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. We turn our thoughts now to those among us and those in our hearts who are ill and who are in need of healing of body, of mind, or of spirit. If you're on Zoom, I invite you to add in the chat the names of anyone for whom you are praying for healing this evening. And I'm going to give everyone a chance to add names out loud. We hold in our thoughts and in our hearts for healing this evening Jesse Sakharov, Ira Weiss, Elaine Drucker, Allison Plummer, Rabbi Dara Lerner, Susan Sisler, Joellen Fox, Alan Fremer, Valerie Pace, George Landberg, Susan Bilecki, Dana Haitkin Nelson, Arlene Rosenthal, Michael Luck, Barbara Weiner, Joan Lifshitz, Elizabeth Lee, Amy Juskowitz Soonseller, Deanna Roth, Jonathan Falkowski, Martha and Ed Vincent, Ingrid Grosso, Audrey Cohen, Eddie DeAngelis, Vicki Lightnaker, Nettie Trommer, Mia Gannon, Jerry Prezioso, Jeff Abel, Patricia Christensen, Monica Bayer, John Belay, Liz Yasuda, Mark and Paul Steiner, Patty and Erwin Cohen, Mimi and Celia Karp, Anne-Marie Rogan, Tom Rogan, Marion Mandel, Jerry Jaffe, Les Schenker, Myron Jacobson, Shira Reese, Jonathan Dash, Carolyn Dash, Donna Saltz, Ellen Dufour, Lou Levinson, Rita Soul, Cynthia Wilson, Donna Clements, Daniel Ryan, Joe DeVito, Todd Petrie, Miriam Goldstein, Joshua, Isidore, Lillian, Rachel, David, and Sarah Goldstein, Jody Siegel Stein, Saul Siegel, Laurie Hope, Mark Dworkin, Sal Comiso, Jeremy Briel, Karen Vanderhorn, Lauren and Ian Silverman, Genevieve Lightfoot, Maddie Rosenbaum, Efim Edelman. Mary Lou McGivney, Sarah West, Warren Feliz, Elena Aram, Chanel Kamabach, Jimmy Jenkins, Joanna Marie, Teresa O'Sullivan, for those in the Caribbean islands who are in need of healing, especially since Barbados' exit from under the Queen last year, and apparently Jamaica will be next. So we hold them in our hearts for healing. David Mauser, Hannah Paines, Lou Levinson, Rita Soul, John and Ruth Belay, Bobby and Dan Baumgarten, Sam and Shelley Sarfati, Leslie Sedlitz, Howard and Ara Poleski, Judith Kors, Freya Kashmir, Delphine Wolf, Elid and Pat Colella, Jeannie Osiello, Paul Markowitz, Jesse Laban, Ron Cricky, Laura Cricky, Baby Isaiah Torres, Susan and Tony Vai, Jean and Larry Green, Eve Heyman, Zizi Potsdam, Fred Miller, Bill Eichler, Mary Lou McGivney, Baby James Scarpulla, Elliot Woofsey, Rhonda Kramer, Ann Kelly, Paul Markowitz, Nancy Kelly, Robert Trachtman, and those who are suffering in Ukraine. Who else has names to add for healing this evening? Janice? Alan? Mike? Anyone else on Zoom want to add names out loud? Okay. We include also all of those suffering from COVID-19, including Lisa Rose. We include also those who have been harmed in conflicts around the world. We've already mentioned Afghanistan and Ukraine, also other areas where people have been hurt and are suffering, and those who have been harmed in recent natural disasters or wounded in service to our country or Israel. Our Misha Berach is on page 371. Misha Berach Avotenu Mekor HaBracha Limotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Misha Berach Imotenu Mekor HaBracha Lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shelema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen. Shabbat Shalom. Tazria. This week's Torah portion is Tazria. Do you know which Torah portion that is? That's the Torah portion that starts out with childbirth and how long a woman is ritually impure after she gives birth to a child, and how it's twice as long if you have a girl than if you have a boy, and so the feminists are all, ugh. And then it goes on. It goes on to talk about what happens when you get an infection on your skin. Like, it's usually translated as leprosy, but it's not leprosy. It's tzara. It's maybe more like impetigo or something. And you get sort of a scaly patch on your skin. It's often white. It's gross. And then, you might be ritually impure because of that, so you have to go to the priest, and the priest has to check it out. And if the priest says, oh yeah, that's definitely tzara'at, you have to go outside of the camp and wait for 7 days, and then the priest has to check you again and see if you got better. And if you did get better, then you can do a number of rituals to become ritually pure again. So this is one of the most dreaded Torah portions in the Torah. The second half of it is not better, and we do have twins who have that as their Torah portion this year, but we don't have anyone for Tazria. We almost always have someone having a B'nai Mitzvah for Tazria, but not this year, so just me getting to talk about it. And this is one of those Torah portions that people look at it and say, well, this is about ritual purity, which is only necessary when you have the tabernacle or the temple that you're going to worship by doing animal sacrifice. And we don't have any of that anymore, so we're not so concerned about our ritual purity, which doesn't have anything to do with whether you're clean or not. And so this seems very unrelatable to us. So this week I was working with one of our B'nai Mitzvah kids, and this isn't really going to narrow it down because we have 10 B'nai Mitzvah coming up all in a row starting next week. So it could be any one of them. Many of them have rather esoteric Torah portions, and this kid is no exception. And so I'm talking to this kid who is a really smart kid, and he is looking at they're looking at their Torah portion and, sacrifices and sprinkling blood around, and they're saying, how could any of this possibly have any meaning for me? And I said to them, I want to encourage you to think of it another way. Instead of saying, what can this possibly mean to me? You should say, what can this possibly mean to me? And they said, that's the same thing. And I said, well, but I said it differently the second time. Couldn't you tell? No. And I said, well, what I'm saying is, apply your creative mind to this. And instead of saying, there can't possibly be any meaning to this, ask yourself, what meaning could I find in this? By thinking about it creatively. And there's actually much more creative scope in a Torah portion like Tazria than there is in a Torah portion like Toldot, which is the one about Jacob and Esau, and they fight, and they're people. Oh, that was yours, Nathan? That was Nathan's. It's a great Torah portion. It's very juicy and meaty and easy to find things to talk about because it's people, and they're doing people things and the same kinds of things that people do now. But Leviticus is not really that way. So you have to be much more creative, and that means that sometimes you can find really amazing things. So if I'm looking at Tazria, which in fact I was this week, and thinking about Tazria, and I'm looking at what is happening to this person who has this skin ailment. Well, they are being shut out of worship. They can't worship so long as they have this thing happening to them. Because that's what ritual impurity is. Ritual impurity means that if you approach the sanctuary, you could actually die because you are not compatible with the holiness of the sanctuary right now. And so that's bad. That's why they want to get you away until you get better. So forgetting about the skin disease aspect of it and just saying, there's a condition that makes it impossible to worship. That made me think about, what condition might one of us have that might temporarily or, God forbid, permanently make it impossible for us to worship? And so then I was thinking about the fact that whenever I go to an Orthodox synagogue and I have to sit behind a mechitza, the division between the women and the men, that makes me so angry that I cannot worship. And so my condition is anger. And that anger is, I haven't been able to overcome that. I haven't been able to overcome that feeling of anger about, feeling sort of pushed aside. And I know that women who are Orthodox do not feel the same way about that. And I know there are lots of people who don't feel the same way about that. And I don't particularly want to feel that way, but that's how I feel in those situations. And so that condition prevents me from worshiping in that situation. This week, we had security training here. And the security training was very intense, and it was all about what happens if, God forbid, somebody comes to the synagogue meaning to do us harm. It was also about, if somebody has a medical condition or if there's a fire, but the main focus was, what if somebody comes who wants to harm us? And, the point of that security training, while it was frightening, was not to make us be more frightened. It was, in fact, to help us to feel prepared, so and as if we have tools so that we feel less frightened about something happening, because we have a sense that we might know how to handle ourselves. Or, if you didn't participate in the security training, you could have a sense that I and some other people who are in the leadership here have training in how to handle ourselves and how to tell you what to do in that kind of a situation. For some people, without that training, the level of fear might prevent them from being able to worship here in the sanctuary. So fear could potentially be another condition that we might have that would prevent us from worshiping. Now, I might think that when someone is ill, when they have a skin infection, they might need worship more than ever before. And when we are angry or when we are afraid, we might need worship more than ever before. And so the paradox of it is that the condition prevents it. And that's why I do that little breathing thing before we begin services on Friday night. And that's an effort to give us an opportunity to put aside whatever condition we might have that might interfere with our ability to worship. And when I use the word worship, I mean in whatever way you understand that. To feel like the calmness of Shabbat as we go through the familiar prayers. Maybe you actually do feel like you're interacting with a higher power. Maybe you don't. Maybe it's something else that you get out of this. But when I say worship, I mean whatever that thing is that you get out of Friday night services. And so what can we learn? What can we learn from this? Well, we can learn that it's okay to take a break. It's okay to take a break and allow yourself to heal, if that's what it takes. And maybe, if you have one of these conditions, like the examples I'm using are anger and fear, you actually are not forbidden from being at services because you won't die if you're at services while you have that condition. So maybe being at services and being gentle with yourself that I can't feel it today because I'm having this other thing going on. Well, that's okay. That's okay. You can take that time. You can take that time to heal. And I think the other piece that I'd like for us to learn from that today is that you get to come back. You get to come back when you're feeling better or, when that condition passes or when you're able to manage that condition and work through it, you can come back and have the experience again. And so my blessing for us is that we may be gentle with ourselves, that we may have compassion for whatever conditions we may have that might interfere with what we want to be experiencing. And may we work through those conditions so that we are able to have the experience again in its full blossoming, in the full experience that we wish it to be. Amen and Shabbat Shalom. We are going to turn now to the Elenu. The Elenu is on page 586. We're going to start at the top of the page. I invite you, if you're able, to rise. Elenu lishabeach ladon hakol, latet gidula leotze breshit, shehu notesh shamayim v'yosed aretz, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינת עוזו בגובהי מרומים, הוא אלוהינו אין עוד. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו ושמו אחד. You may be seated. Did you notice we have the super big Torah in there? You didn't notice? Oh, it's a very, very big, tall Torah, and that is our Holocaust Memorial Torah that, what? You want to stand up again so you can see? Okay. Stand up again. There. Yeah, look at that. Look. Yeah, I think on Zoom you might even be able to see because you can see the ark. It's very big. It doesn't fit in one of the little alcoves in there because it's too tall. And what? The silver is polished. And the reason that it's in there is because back in the before times, we used that Torah for all of our B'nai Mitzvah because it's from what used to be Czechoslovakia, and it survived the Holocaust in an abandoned synagogue with a whole bunch of other Torahs that were put there. And then a trust was formed, and the Torahs were distributed to congregations all over the world on loan. So we have this one, and so as a connection, we use it for B'nai Mitzvah, and I sort of forgot that we do that, but I remembered again because now that we're having them in person again, because like when I was taking a tour to somebody's house so that they could do their bar bat mitzvah on Zoom, I wasn't going to take that, enormous Torah. But now we can use it again, so it's very exciting. It's just humongous. All right. But now, before we conclude, we do turn our thoughts to those who are no longer with us. I'm putting the yard site list on the screen. I'm sorry that it is so small. Those of you who are here in person have the yard site list in your bulletin. And those on Zoom, if you have names to add for yard sites or for a recent death, you're welcome to put those in the chat, and everyone will have a chance to add names out loud. We remember those who have died in the past year. Yefim Polyak, the Reverend Eleanor Lee McGee Street, Arthur Goldstein, Lotta Bloom, Irv Golden, Arthur Derry, Andrew Mazzella, Joyce Braziller, Linda Gilbert Schneider, Della Cohen, Fran Arnowitz, Selma Carl, Harold Carl, Emily Seff, Moshe Usher Reinitz, Huma Saber, Lila Bloomfield, John Carfisi, Andy Glantzman, Todd Zeitlin, John Previtt Jr., Augie Dorio, Janet Esposito, Kay Josephs, Arnold Block, Elizabeth Clark, Kyle McGee Sr., Ida Houston, Louisa Espute, Perry De La Touche, Ira Roth, Roberta Hayrath, George Liss, the Reverend Claude Park Street, Sylvia Tishkovich, Ellen Belofsky, Cindy Retagliata, Dolores Weinberger, Suzanne Leknos, Shirley Kafker, Lillian Frost Ridgely, Thomas Marinin, Meg Goldate, Marguerite Romeo, John Young, Isadora Frost, Fred Perlman, Claire Kramer, Bob Ira Kleinberg, Dorothea Schuring. On our yard site list this evening are included Sandy Gannon Abel, a friend of Sam Silverman, Charles Davis, Mona Goldberg's father, Arlind Gass, Mary Lou Crickey's grandfather, Sigbert Greenbaum, Madeline Greenbaum's husband and Bonnie Greenbaum's father, and Esther Horowitz Silverman, remembered by Sam Silverman. We include also Rabbi Dr. Yehuda Shabbatay, Francis Bergman, Detectives Rivera and Mora, those who have been killed in Ukraine, and Eslyn remembers her cousin Lancelot Grant. Mike? Alan? That's right. I also want to mention Madeleine Albright and those 11 people who were killed in the past, I think, 2 weeks in terrorist attacks in Israel. There has been an increase in terror attacks in Israel, probably related to the historic meeting of ministers from 4 Arab countries in Israel, together with diplomats from Israel and the United States. But it's a difficult time. We include also all of those who have died from COVID-19. Does anyone on Zoom have names they'd like to add out loud? Okay. So as I said, we include all of those who have died from COVID-19, those who have died in war or terror or disaster, or alone and homeless on the streets of our cities. The Mourner's Kaddish is on page 598, and I invite you, if you're able, to rise and join in or to participate according to your own custom. Yitzgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, ba'alma divrach yiruteh v'yamlich malchuteh, v'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chaye dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uv'izman kariv yamru amen. Yehei shemei rabbah mevorach leolam ulalmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yit hadar, v'yit alev, v'yit halal, shemei dekudasha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiran be'alma v'yimru, amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim Elenu ve'el kol Yisrael v'yimru, amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, Elenu ve'el kol Yisrael, Vimru, amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort to the bereaved wherever they may be. And let us say, amen. You may be seated. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru, imru, amen. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. I think that Adrian is not here this evening, so I will go ahead and give some announcements. So this week, on Tuesday, which is April 5th, is afternoon Torah study at 1 o'clock with Rabbi Pinsky on Zoom. At 4 o'clock in the bulletin, it says March 8th, but it's actually, and I'm sure it was on March 8th, but it's also on April 5th, gentle chair yoga and gentle qigong with Drs. Gail Levine-Fried and Robert Fried. That's at 4 o'clock on Tuesday. Confirmation class is at 6 o'clock on Wednesday. On Monday also is adult Brit Mitzvah class at 7:15. Also on Wednesday, a meeting to talk about the master plan for the synagogue. That's for whoever that involves. We are going to have a second night Seder in person at 6 p.m. on April 16th. That's a Saturday evening. It's going to be a kosher meal. I'll be leading the Seder. It's $75 per person, less for children under 13. Call the temple office to make your reservation. Save the date also for June 12th, 2022. That's going to be our Bashir Journal Luncheon, which we are hoping a lot. We'll still be able to have it in person by that time. It's going to be at Gargiulo's. And we're going to finally honor Adrienne Knoll. We were originally going to honor her 2 years ago, now almost 3 years ago, for being the newsletter editor, but we never got around to that because of the pandemic, and now she's the temple president, so I guess we'll just honor her for that, but maybe also because she was the newsletter editor before. Anyway, Adrienne deserves to be honored for whatever we are honoring her for. So you can place ads in the journal, call the temple office to make your reservation. I think you received an email with ad blanks in it. So if you can solicit from businesses, or if you want to place ads yourself, that's awesome. We're also going to have a goods and services auction, which is going to coincide with it's going to be like the week leading up to the journal luncheon. So right now, the fundraising committee is looking for donations of new items or your art or your services, if you want to teach someone how to juggle or make them challah for Shabbat, and you want them to pay for those things, you can donate that to the auction. And the people to contact about that are, you can contact Pam Glansman, Karen Eichel, or the temple office by April 8th. We do have the tzedakah plate on the way out of the sanctuary. Thank you to Phyllis for doing the blessings over the candles, and to Robert for doing the Kiddush. Thank you to Michael Tornick for, playing things in keys that I can sing, and for being an amazing accompanist. And is that it? I think that's it. Oh, and for those of you on Zoom, obviously, you're not going to pass the tzedakah plate on your way out of the sanctuary, but the donate button is always on our website, and you can put tzedakah in the little note, and you can do it that way if you want to give tzedakah. So the tzedakah goes into a fund that I distribute to those in need. Anything else from anybody? No? I would just like to say that I'm very happy not to be wearing a mask. Now that masks are optional in the synagogue, I hope we can keep it that way, but I'm going to enjoy it while it lasts, even if it doesn't, even if it might not last always. Day by day. That's right, living in the moment, enjoying the moments. So we're going to close up. We're going to finish with Ein Keloheinu. I do not know what page Ein Keloheinu is on. I'm sorry about that, but it's on the screen, so you can sing along from the screen. If you're able, I invite you to rise. In Keloheinu, 622. In Kadonenu, En Kemalkeinu, En Kemoshienu, Mi Keloheinu, Mi Chadonenu, Mi Chemalkeinu, Mi Chemoshienu, Nodel Eloheinu, Nodel Adonenu, Nodel Malkeinu, Nodel Moshienu, Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu, Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshienu. Yevarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha, Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yichuneka, Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May God bless you and keep you. May God's face shine on you and be gracious to you. May God lift God's face towards you and give you peace. Amen. And before we go, we have some challah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat
Shabbat
shalom.
everybody. You can come and get some
Shabbat
challah,
shalom.
or I'll take it to the community room. There's an oneg in the community room. Hello.
Everybody. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat
Thank
shalom.
you, Rabbi. Good to see you smiling,
Feel so free.
everybody.
Me too. I feel so like.
She said it, I didn't even know it.
Hi, Lori.
Hello. Hey, Lori. Hey,
Love
Elaine. Good to see you all.
Same here.
Beautiful.
Be well, everyone.
Everyone. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. Be
Shabbat
well. See you
everybody.
tomorrow.
Thanks,
B'yachad.
Rabbi.
Um,
Thanks.
Thank you,
My
Rabbi.
pleasure. Great to see
Thank you.
everybody.
Rabbi, I got kicked off the internet and came back on just in time for the blessing, and you know how much I love that.
Oh, I'm glad you didn't miss that. I'm
Aw.
sorry that you got kicked off,
Thank
though.
you. Thank you. Shabbat shalom.
Be well.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shalom, everyone.
Shalom.
Thank you, Rabbi Heidi.
My
See you all in the
pleasure.
morning. Hi, Joyce. Hi.
Shalom.
Remember, services that are at 11 tomorrow
Right, and we have B'yachad, correct?
at 10. Yep.
Okay. All right. I'm planning on being there. So we'll see you all in the morning. Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Shabbat shalom.
Hi, everybody. Good night.
Oh, Joyce. Shabbat shalom, Joyce. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom, Joyce.
Yes, Shabbat shalom.
Shalom, Rabbi.
Oh, Shabbat shalom, Joyce.
I know. Hmm. Got it.